Growing up, I spent more time playing StarCraft than I could ever count, more specifically the custom maps, and some of my oldest and most favorite gaming memories are wrapped up in those defense maps, like Starship Troopers Outpost that would only give you a handful of units and focused on the intensity of using those to defend against wave after wave of enemies. So when I was given a key to check out Starship Troopers Terran Command, which is in some ways that concept turned into its own modern RTS game, I was genuinely interested to see how it would hold up, or at the very least, if it was a solid real-time strategy game. This video will give you my thoughts after diving into it, including if the DLC is worth it, in addition to the future of the game and a promising new mode that you can play right now. Ironically, the StarCraft custom defense map comparison was a little bit closer than I expected. That's not to say that this game is just one giant loop of defending fortresses against overwhelming waves of bugs, because it isn't. However, Starship Troopers Terran Command does strip away and streamline a lot of the real-time strategy standards. The usual flurry of gathering resources, building up a base, and moving up the tech tree isn't the focus here. In fact, since you're mostly supplied by central command or capturing other outposts, base building really requires very little input from you at all. But don't worry, you can still get your micromanagement fix, it just boils down to the squad level instead. Combat mechanics are designed to keep you engaged and trying to maximize each squad's survivability and output. For example, there is a line of sight style system that makes positioning much more crucial than in other real-time strategy games. Your troops can't shoot through other allied troops full bore, so angles and open firing areas come into play. This means that if one squad is in front of the other, the squad that is blocked will suffer penalties to their fire rate, or sometimes not even be able to attack at all. But if one is on higher ground above the other, then they're both clear to shoot. Each squad even has an indicator above it so you can constantly see this. It's a system that makes using the terrain more valuable and does away with some of the attack moves spamming with massive amounts of units in favor of keeping the ones that you do have alive. Because much like those old defense games, the longer your squads survive and the more combat they see, the more they rank up. And at rank 3, each squad can pick their own individual elite ability that can really turn the tide of battle against the tougher enemies. Remember the tanker bugs?
Ain't much to look at after you scrape them off your boot.
Rank 3 squads are much more valuable than a bunch of rookies, so keeping your troops alive and healthy is a priority, which is done by reinforcing them at outposts or drop zones, or using a radio operator squad to set up a mobile drop zone. I will say that most missions are pretty straightforward with extra supplies and everything that you need marked, so there's really not much reason to explore or go out of your way to do anything but the objectives. This is especially noticeable in compound or cavern type missions where you're in a small area with kind of a direct line to the objectives. Early on, this made me think that it might get boring or repetitive, but Terran Command actually does a great job of structuring the missions so you're always moving forward. Whether it's the threat of an overwhelming horde of bugs, a new objective or event, or something that needs to be done in a certain amount of time, there really is never a dull moment, which seems like a good place to tell you that there is also no pause for battle. This is a pure real-time strategy. I'll admit, I came into Terran Command completely blind, so I wasn't expecting this to be a squad management type of game, but if you follow the channel, you know that I like to get down with the squad tactics and gameplay, so this was actually a bit of a pleasant surprise, and honestly, it's done very well. If you somehow are this far into the video and don't know the basic lore of the Starship Troopers universe, here it is. Humanity is united under one interstellar government called the Federation, which is basically ruled by the military elite. The Federation requires all citizens to serve, whether in the military or some form of public service, and uses a lot of propaganda and media to control the narrative. They are also in a massive war with an alien species called the Arachnids, or bugs. Starship Troopers is known for its satire and over-the-top propaganda, and the game leans into it a little bit, but not too much, instead using it as more of a backdrop and story element with missions tied together through Federal News Network broadcasts that fill you in on what's going on. Don't expect any kind of intense storytelling. This is a war and these are operations. There are some main characters and commanders, but for the most part, your squads and soldiers are just faceless cogs in the war for the Federation. The DLC content actually takes a different approach, but I'll talk more about that in their dedicated section later. The Federal News Network broadcasts are still a nice touch though and add to the feeling of the universe, even bringing in the signature tagline, "Would you like to know more?" It's almost like you're playing through a movie. In the main campaign, the pacing starts off a little bit slow as the first handful of missions kind of show you the fundamentals, but once you run into the bigger bugs, things start to ramp up and escalate quickly, with a surprising variety of scenarios and units introduced on both sides. You'll have engineers with incendiary grenades that can build turrets, or radio operators that can call in dropship fire support, fighting tough-to-kill tiger bugs in close combat, while plasma grenadiers and scorpions keep you pinned down from a distance and make it so you have to keep moving. It gets chaotic, with plenty of moments that made me feel like I was back in the StarCraft custom defense days. The base game campaign is 19 missions that should span you roughly 15 to 20 hours depending, and if you don't know, this is a single player only game, which honestly is kind of surprising. But there are some features here for replayability. Starship Troopers Terran Command has challenge modes and missions created by the developers, as well as a full map editor and scenarios created by the community. And just like the good old days, the custom maps are where the creativity and replayability really shine, with all kinds of new campaigns, defense scenarios, and even one where you can play as the bugs. This custom editor, community scenarios, and a new game mode being added that I'll talk about next are the backbone of the replayability for Terran Command. But first, what about the DLC? As of this recording, there are 2 DLC packs available, each adding their own new campaign separate from the main story. The first one is Raising Hell, and you can guess from the name that the gimmick is fire everywhere. The mobile infantry is deployed to a planet filled with fire and lava to complement and take over the mercenary groups that are stationed there and protect humanity as the arachnid violence escalates. Raising Hell adds a new 7-mission campaign and 3 new challenge missions, along with new units like mercenary shotguns and shredders, and new bugs to fight. It has a pretty low review score if you look at it, but I thought the campaign was alright, although the voice acting is pretty bad, and the environments are a little more cluttered and make the pathfinding noticeably worse sometimes. So overall, this DLC is kind of a mixed bag. Coming in at $10, it's not crazy expensive, but I would say the main reasons to buy it would be if you really enjoy the game, or you want the extra units and things that it adds to play them in the custom campaigns. Otherwise, maybe wait for a sale. Which brings us to the second DLC, Urban Onslaught. This one adds a new 9-mission campaign, but it takes a little bit of a different angle. In addition to the mobile infantry, you play as a police force fighting off an arachnid invasion on an island that has never had one there before. Moving from deserts and caves to an urban cityscape with streets and sewer tunnels. Personally, I always like the urban warfare style, and this DLC does a good job of making it feel like a police force as opposed to a military force. You're using things like flashbangs and riot shields instead of mini warheads and incendiary grenades. There's also a little bit more of a story here, but overall it just feels different from the base game but keeps the same strategic mechanics. I found it really fun, and if you were only going to buy one DLC, this would be the one that I would recommend. It is slightly more expensive than the other one at $12, but again, if you like the base game and its mechanics, or you want the assets for the custom campaigns, it's not a crazy price to pay. As for the future of Starship Troopers Terran Command, it's actually still getting tons of support. Urban Onslaught recently had 2 challenge missions added to it, and a 3rd DLC was announced to be in the works, but we don't really have any details on that so far. On top of that, a new game mode designed around replayability has been in beta testing on Steam for a few weeks now, and players can check it out and give feedback anytime. Announced at the Slytherin Next event, Territories is designed to be a standalone game mode with its own unique maps that players will fight for domination points on. Capturing and holding these points will allow you to buy more resources and progress through the battle tiers to tech up. At the same time, you'll be fighting against a wide variety of all of the arachnid enemies available, plus some new ones, with improved AI specifically designed for this mode to counter the player and get stronger over time. All of the DLC is being integrated into this mode, and the trailer shows different factions from the different DLCs that are available to play. We don't have a time frame on the full mode release yet, since this is an ongoing project, but the developers have promised that over the next few months, plenty of things will be added in, including new maps and enemies. I look forward to the future of Starship Troopers Terran Command, as this is legitimately one of the best real-time strategy games that I've played in a while, and one that I can see myself dropping into just to play here and there whenever I want that feeling back of those old StarCraft defense map days. For more strategy gaming content, typically in the turn-based variation, feel free to subscribe and check out the channel.